that. Oh God, I'm gonna die. I gotta get this on camera. No.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Marino Show. I'm your host, David Marino, and I am so excited to have our guests today. Tiffany Helm, Brooke Bundy, mother-daughter, both actresses. You probably recognize them. Tiffany was in Friday the 13th, Part 5. She's appeared in a number of other films, including Reform School Girls, 13 Fanboy. She's had television appearances in shows like 21 Jump Street. Brooke Bundy, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Part 4, and she has a prolific television career, has appeared in a number of iconic shows, including Wonder Woman, Donna Reed's show. I used to watch Donna Reed's show with my mom on Nick at Night. Star Trek, The Next Generation, soap operas, on and on and on, stage work. I'm so happy to have you both here today. Thank you so much for joining me. And I know you're going to be talking to me about an exciting new project that you're both involved in. So again, I bow to you. Thank you so much for joining my show.
Well, thank you, and I bow to you for sharing the time. And it's really cool when we get asked to do these, because it's it's an honor. So thank you.
It's a privilege.
Great. Well, first I have to get into right off the top. You both are involved in a film, a new film that's going to be, shooting in a bit, called Catnip. It's described as a horror comedy. I want you to tell me about this project, because I know there's a Kickstarter campaign and a lot of things related to the film that's happening right now. But what can you tell me about Catnip and how you're both going to be involved in it? We can start with Tiffany, Brooke, whoever wants to speak first.
So I'm not only a cast member, but I am an associate producer on it. And I think I'm going to be wearing a third hat as the still photographer. So I am very involved in this project. And it's a creature feature. We're using all practical effects. We're not doing CGI. And we're using a lot of cats. And it's really cool because they're all going to be they are already. Our SFX team is kind of paired with our animal trainer, and they have these cats. I mean, we've had to cast a few of them because we're looking for very specific types for our lead baddie cats. We've got one of the bad cats. We got a couple more that we're needing to cast, but they're all rescue cats. So they've all been adopted into the trainer's home. And I think if there's more, like, they're going to be adopted. Like, so anyway, it's all rescue cats. So it's just a really cool project, and we're trying to give back to the community. And right now we have our Kickstarter that's going on till November 22nd. And one of the perks is being able to attend the premiere. And all the little goodies that come with that. But if you can't attend the premiere, which is going to be in San Pedro, California, where we're shooting, you can sponsor a film student, and we will get the student there. And not only that, but they will be able to get like a one-on-one filmmaking session with our producer, Rob Margolis, who can show them kind of like about making movies. So we're really trying to, and we're involving the community in San Pedro too, and supporting the small businesses out there. So it's really a community project, and this is a total labor of love. We're all really excited about it. Niall Cavazos Garcia is the writer and director. And yeah, and hopefully you guys can talk, because you are both like 80s and 90s horror fans. So I think that you could exchange the stories. He's got some good ones. So yeah, we're super excited about it, and we're scheduled to shoot in February. And again, the Kickstarter is going until November 22nd. I know this will be aired before that, so you can still join in the Catnip family. And we got like popcorn buckets that shape like cats, and piñatas, and memorabilia from the show, and I mean from the movie. And yeah, so there's my thing about Catnip. I could go on and on and on, but I'll let my mom talk.
Well,
And
Brooke,
I'm working with my mom. Sorry. That's the best part. I'm working with my mom.
I was gonna say, is this the first time you two have worked together in this sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Brooke, for you, how does it feel being involved in this project and also getting to work alongside your daughter, Tiffany? And are you excited to be involved in it?
Yes, I'm very excited to be involved in it. But the idea of working with Tiff is like, I mean, it wasn't even on my bucket list. It was so far fetched. And the fact is that I stopped acting years ago, so it was really far fetched. So this came as an offer, and I turned it down because I thought that it would like excite someone to do something bad to cats. Like sometimes you hear about people sitting in a dark theater and they go, "Ooh, that looks like a good idea. I'll rip up a cat." And since I'm an animal activist, I thought I can't, I can't stand that thought. So I talked to Niall about it, and he said he was an animal activist also, and he said that he doesn't think that that's going to be, the result of someone seeing the movie. So I said, okay, then I'm in. Because the thing is, I had seen a short that he had done, and I was so blown away by it. That's why I talked to my daughter about it. I said, Tiff, this was amazing, incredible. It's called The Last Ride. It's a very short movie that he did, and it's just like it's incredible. So I was really humbled and felt very privileged to be asked to do this movie. Um, and then as I talked to my daughter about it, this other world began opening up, and she got in touch with Niall. And I can't remember the entire story, but at one point, being the actress she is and being the entrepreneur that she is, she asked if she could send him her video or her tape, and he said sure. So she did, and the next thing she knew, that she was being cast as um, the cop Garcia. I don't know what the officer Garcia. So yeah, so that was amazing. I mean, there's a lot more to that story than that, but basically that was it. And it was like we couldn't believe, our great fortune that we're able to do this, and the fact that she's going to stay with me for a month. That got the month down. That she's going to stay with me for a month. She's in Canada at the moment, so I'm really really excited about all of these three things. They're really an incredible gift.
And also the fact that, I think what caught my attention about this project when I had spoken with Tiffany on Facebook and then was reading about Catnip was the very fact that you are doing so much to help these animals in need.
Yeah.
And you don't always hear about that with films like this. And so I thought, wow, that's very interesting. And I love animals. I especially love cats. So
Oh,
what an amazing kind of, thing to give back to,
yeah.
the animal community. And I'm sure for you being an activist, that all sort of plays right into what you're interested in.
Well, I'm going to say something that's going to sound really crazy, but that's okay because that's okay. But I'm a Buddhist. I practice Buddhism, and I believe in karma, and I also believe in cause and effect. So I was thinking about these kitty cats, and if they had been left to their own and left in shelters, they might have been killed in the shelter, or if they were out on the street, they could, die of feline distemper, get worms, get into cat fights, get infections, get hit by a car. I mean, the likelihood of a cat surviving the streets is really pretty minimal. It's really sad, but and they die very young. So I was thinking that here are these cats that was their destiny, and then somehow, some way, everything changed, and now they're movie star cats. So, and they're going to live in these lovely homes, and they're going to be fed, and they're going to have medicine, and they're going to be supported, and they're going to be cuddling up at night. So as opposed to shivering in an alley. So I think, and I'm sorry if that sounds crazy, but those cats change karma big time. So
That does not sound crazy at all. I think that's just a wonderful thing overall for
yeah.
for everyone involved in this project. Tiffany, you did talk a little about the film, but what is the premise of the film? Can you share that with our audience?
A little bit. It's
Okay.
it's a family that moves from I believe they moved from New York, and they're moving to this kind of up and coming um gentrified town where it's I guess it's supposed to be California because there's common because it's warm. It's like it's Christmas time, but it's warm, and the sun is like it's not very Christmassy. Um, and the dad he's taken this job as a super at this kind of rundown building, and they meet all their neighbors. Some are friendly, some are not so friendly. They're a very eclectic group, and things kind of unfold. And these cats are there's something wrong with the cats. They're not like regular cats, and they are very violent. So the all the people in the building have to kind of band together to fight this army of cats. And it's a horror movie, so there's going to be lots of really over the top, interesting, clever kills, and and there's also a lot of comedy to it. So as you're like as you've hit the peak of like being horrified, I can't do any more horror, there'll be some funny thing you can go and kind of lighten up, and then you're laughing and you're like, okay, but this is a horror movie, and then boom, something else comes along. So there's lots of twists and turns in it and stuff that you don't expect, and I guess that's about what I can give away.
And there's also a website for the film if people are interested in looking it up. It's catnipthemovie.com.
Yeah.
So I went to that, and I have to also say to both of you that the advertising for this film, or just, the website and all the things that you've been doing, Tiffany, on your social media, y'all are doing a really good job of promoting this and getting it out there. And are you all, I have to ask, do you know, or maybe it's a spoiler, but are you two in any scenes together? Do you know yet?
I cannot say. I cannot
Okay.
confirm or deny. But I can also, since we're still on it, and it's not like I'm here checking texts. I actually wanted to go over the cast that we have so far. And I think when we get another milestone on our Kickstarter, then we announce another cast member. But so far, we have Jake Busey, Charlotte Kirk, Brooke Bundy, Jeffrey Arend, myself, Lorelei Linklater, Akihiro Kitamura, Christian Calloway, Anna Kloss, and Lord Craven. So we have some offers out to some other people. So it's going to be like a really epic cast, and I'm super excited to be working with all these folks. So it's going to be good. And they're
Brooke,
already they're already doing, like, Niall's already writing like prequels and sequels and stuff. So we're we're doing this thing. Could be an awesome franchise rivaling anything that's out there now.
well, and Brooke, you said that you kind of stepped away from acting for a while, but how do you feel about getting back in front of the camera and doing what you did for a long time?
I'm okay with it. I mean, I do conventions, so I'm very comfortable with the whole concept and everything. But I did stop acting. I can't remember when it was. It was like um, 90, 90, 1990 something. And I became an agent, actually, for a children's agent, which was like the best job ever. I loved being a children's agent. It just, really changing lives, really changing lives. Um, and discovering kids that had never done anything, and suddenly they're in a Steven Spielberg movie. Um, so that was great. And then I became a personal manager to young people, children, as well as a few adults. And that was always great. I kind of was worried about that I was going to be like an OBGYN, that they would just call me in the middle of the night and say, quick, get over here. I'm dying, or I've got to see my boyfriend or whatever. But they were all very respectful. They didn't call me past like 6:30 at night. So it was great. It was a good ride. And I was able to be on set with a lot of, my clients, and just watch. I'm very protective. So it was nice that watching them, making sure they were okay, making sure they had what they needed, and making sure that they were treated with respect and dignity. So that was also, it was a really good job for me. And then, and retired.
Well, I know that you started in the industry young as well, right? When you started in the industry.
Yeah, I was. I did my first commercial when I was 14, um, and then I did a Broadway play when I was 15. JB, and from then, and I looked like I was 12, but I was moving toward a legal age. So in other words, when you are certain ages, you can work more hours. So even though I was coming up to 16, which is a crucial age in the industry, but I looked 12. So it was and I had a Broadway credit. So, so and I could cry on cue. So I had it wrapped up.
And Tiffany, you were also pretty young when you got in the industry, right?
Well, my mom didn't want me to be in the industry as a kid. It's a rough one for kids, and I think I begged and I pleaded, but she was like, no. But I was involved in my theater department in school, and we had a super strong theater department, and all kinds of very famous people came out of it. Um, so I was very involved with it, and then when I was 18, I I was pursuing actually modeling, um, because I decided I didn't want to get sucked into the acting world. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to get like stuck in that. Like I wanted to, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I started going out for these commercials. So I got a commercial agent, and because modeling and at the time you had to be very like cookie cutter with model. You had to have, the height and the certain look, and be like your face had to be symmetrical, which is not a whole lot of people are like that. So I didn't do really great with the modeling, but my agent started sending me on commercials. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, there's this other project, this TV show, and there's this film. So I'm like, okay. And so I started booking, and it was kind of like, that wasn't supposed to happen, because it's like there was the commercial department and there was the theatrical department, and they didn't really cross over. And in my case, they kind of did. And I started working, and I loved it. I mean, I had, Hard to Hold, where I'm like we're a group of teenagers or fans chasing Rick Springfield around, and he's in a towel, right, at a concert. And I'm like, this is an okay way to make a living. Like, I'm okay with this. Soon after that, I got to do the Robert Altman film. And again, it was an amazing experience. So I really like, I almost blame Robert Altman for getting me for giving me such an incredible first location movie experience, because I was hooked after that. And I mean, I got to a point, again, probably around what my mom was talking about. It was around the 90s where I ended up taking like, what was it, 25, 30-year hiatus. And it's only here back in Canada that I started getting back into it, because I'm a dual citizen. And there's like, we have deals with US companies that come and shoot in Canada, because they get, I mean, it's great for the US film companies because they get the exchange rate, but they have to hire a certain number of cast and crew from Canada. So I'm like, I can do that. And I have a great American accent, right? Because all these like my agent here, there's always this stuff and there's classes on like how to speak American. I'm like, I got it. Right. And there's subtle differences, but that's a thing. They're like, we don't want you to sound Canadian. I'm like, okay. So yeah. So here I am, dabbling back in the business.
But you also went into photography, right? Am I correct in that? You're a photographer?
I am. I had a strong portrait business in Seattle. I lived in Seattle for 18 years. And there was like hardly any acting there. Like I did the Rama game, the Arthur C. Clarke Rama game, where it was a video game, but they were using live actors. They thought this was going to be the new thing, like combining live actors with green screen stuff. And it's like, you can find the stuff on YouTube, and it's very like, it's so 90s. Like it's really got the 90s stamp on it. But I did that, and I did like Medicine Ball was a show that was shot there for a little while. But the problem again is Seattle was really difficult to shoot in. The film commission was really not open to people coming there. So these film crews were like, okay, then we'll go shoot in BC in Canada, and we'll do some exteriors in Seattle, so we get the Seattle vibe. But if it's supposed to take place in Seattle, they just shoot it in BC and save a ton of money. So there was no work there. And so I got into photography. I was like, I get on the other side of the camera, and I absolutely loved it. So I still do that. Like I said, I think I'm going to be the still photographer on Catnip, which is, I'm like, I don't know who's going to take pictures of my scene. Somebody better record it. I'll hand it to my mom or something. But yeah, so it's just staying creative. Got to.
Yeah.
And now kind of coming back to, being in the Catnip film, and this being like an indie feature, and maybe Brooke, you can speak to this. Obviously you both have done like some bigger budget films and like probably lower budget in the middle. But I feel like in the world today, especially indie is where it's at when it comes to a lot of these creative endeavor. Like, I feel like the creativity is there more in the indie films, and that there are more risks and chances that are taken, whether it's horror or not. And, Brooke, you being in the business for a long time, how does it feel to you to kind of see that now there is this power that creators have with social media? They can promote their own stuff. They don't necessarily need a large studio. However, the money helps, of course, but they kind of the creative freedom feels like it's back in the artist's hands. How do you view that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's I mean, there have been so many major big budget films that have failed because of inadequate representation in terms of the media. So this way, it's really putting the whole package back into the producers, the directors, the stars' hands, so we can promote it ourselves. We can do what we need to do. We can come up with, I mean, that idea that Tiff was mentioning about having a student, like sponsoring a student, that's a wonderful idea. We have, there's so many young people with such fresh, amazing ideas. I was at a film festival a month ago, and all the participants were from South America. Oh my goodness, with the film, and they were all shorts, but there was this plethora of talent and new ideas. Like sometimes you go to a movie or see a TV show and you say, "Oh, I've seen this one before," and it may be better or worse, but it's like it's not something new. This was something new, and Catnip is totally new. No one has ever done this, particularly with pussycats. So, and they did it with Cujo. They did it with, other critters, snakes on a plane. So which is like, I love that title. It says it all. But this is a whole different way of looking at horror. And again, making it funny. people say, "What's it about?" And I said, "It's about killer cats that kill people and then eat them." I said, "It's a comedy." So that kind of goes over people's heads a little bit, and it takes place on Christmas Eve, which makes it even more comedic. But I think that, yeah, the power of generating excitement for projects is really much more back in the lap of the creators, particularly with indies, with with other things, because of the social media. People are going around and really promoting themselves, promoting whatever. As you can probably guess, considering the difficulty I had getting on, I am not part of social media. So I'll pick up the phone. But I'm like a minority of one, I think. So yeah, it's a very exciting time. It's also a scary time because the AI stuff is rampant, and we have to be so careful with that. I mean, it obviously, for medicine, for research, for there's so many pluses, but there's a lot of minuses with it. So we've got to be very, very careful.
Yeah, and Tiffany, for you being a creator, being, you did your acting, you're a photographer, it's all creative and in the arts. How is it for you being able to have this kind of control over the material that you're involved in and that, you're going to be putting out into the world?
Well, first, I just started laughing when you said control. I'm like, oh, no. I mean, that's the thing about the creative process. And I learned that as a photographer. Like, I have this thing where when I come up with a concept, I do a lot of conceptual photography. And when I come up with my concept, I can go out there and be aiming to bring that in. And a lot of it is I'll bring it home to just edit on Photoshop, which I can do for like hours and days on end until my brain explodes. But generally, the original concept is the weakest of the everything that I've shot, um, or put together. And if I allow it to like breathe and grow as its own entity, that's when I get like the really cool stuff, the best stuff I've ever shot, or the best projects, the conceptual stuff is not at all what I first imagined. And I mean, I am at a stage as a photographer where I can take what's in my head and I can capture it out there so I can see what the camera's seeing. But again, with the conceptual stuff, you've got to allow it to like grow and be its own thing, or you kill it. So I think it's the same. So that's why I say, like, yeah, I don't really have control over this, but being part of this group, like I love our production team where we have very different approaches to everything. Um, but I think it's really, we're all holding up Catnip. Like we're all allowing this thing to grow, but you got to be careful because it can get away from you. Um, but yeah, I think that the indie movement is a great response to the AI stuff, because we will be looking at, well, we already are looking at AI movies, and those will appeal to a certain group of people. They're fine with that, but we will always, like, I'm not worried about AI completely replacing filmmaking or photography or any of it, because there's always going to be artists creating artwork. We may be underground, we may not be getting paid for it anymore, but we're going to keep creating because that's what we have to do.
I went to see last night the movie Heretic. It's a new movie with Hugh Grant. And it's the first time I've seen in the credits, y'all, mentioning AI. It said no generative AI was used in the making of this film. And I was like, but it was the first time I had seen that in the credits of a film. But it again speaks to the fact that technology is changing so fast that things are happening. There's not any kind of like rules in place, because it's happening so quickly that you have to, especially in the creative world as actors. I was seeing that when they were trying to negotiate the agreement about AI and all of that. But that speaks to the fact that in this film, you're using, real special effects, which I can appreciate, that being a fan of even creature features, that we're using real special effects. It's not CGI. So was that intentional as well? to make sure that this film had that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Niall does not like CGI. And if you talk to him, I mean, he'll say that he finds most of the horror out here just kind of depressing and not, it's like the 80s and 90s had there was an element of fun, even for the most gory things. It was exciting. And now it's just like, ugh. He's like, you walk out and it's not fun anymore. So he's like, no CGI. And I mean, that's another thing. That's part of our Kickstarter with, raising money for the cats, is CGI is actually cheaper to shoot. So, but this is not negotiable. So he's doing practical effects. That's it. And I mean, the nice thing too, my son is in film school as well. And it's interesting because with the young people, there's now a resurgence of more old school. I mean, he sent me a photo of this Aeroflex camera that they got to use in class. And it's his unicorn camera. And it's the fascination with film. So the young people are wanting this, and it's not just because hey, the 80s and 90s were cool. It's there's an element to it that they really, really love and want to explore. So that's really cool. So it's, again, not going to be for everybody. Some people are going to be like, no, technology, keep rolling through. But a lot of people want the old school stuff. Yeah. So with a modern twist on it.
That's an interesting point, because I agree with you on that I think for all the technology that's coming our way and how quickly things are changing, people are I hold this up as a vinyl record. I love vinyl.
Right.
And that is huge right now. It's another example. Even VHS here in Austin, we have a lot of VHS markets that they'll have on a weekend, a little market of VHS films. I think people do find physical media, they miss holding something, being able to read I always look forward to the art on the boxes of the VHS films, the posters. I looked forward to that, the physical,
the lyric sheets in the albums, right?
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of vinyl stores opening up in Hollywood. It's really, really interesting. Yeah, it has a different sound than
it does.
Yeah.
So you both, have been in the film world, and I have to touch on this because as a horror lover, I wanted to make sure we're focusing on Catnip, but I have to say, I love both of the work that you've done in the horror genre. I'll start with Brooke. I cannot tell you how many times I've said "andale," because it was the most hilarious thing to me. Your character was so funny. Elaine Parker in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4. I just absolutely loved that character and what you brought to it. Is there anything that you can remember about making those films that kind of stands out to you? I know in part 3 it was a bigger role. Part 4, you just had the drive-by where you're like, get away from that house. But
Kristen, get my goddamn house. Andale. So I use it with the dog when we're doing a fast pee-pee. Andale. So it's now become part of my being. But yeah, I have wonderful, very fond memories of doing both of those movies. And working with Robert was just such an incredible treat. He's one of the most generous actors I've ever worked with, and funny, really funny. It was just, and I got plopped into it, not knowing anything about Nightmare, nothing, because I'm not a horror fan. So I didn't know about Johnny Depp. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. But some of my friends said, "Oh, you're going to do Nightmare on Elm Street?" Oh, yeah, and it was just it was a job. But I know Tiff's heard this story so many times, and so many people have. But it was a very interesting experience. I was on the set. This was in 3, and there was a whole bunch of, and we're on a soundstage. There's a whole bunch of hubbub going on in the corner, and with the wardrobe person and the director and the producer, and I don't think Robert was there, but they were very animated. It turns out that someone had broken into the studio at night and stolen one of Robert's sweaters. And I thought, oh my goodness, I am into something really big. If someone's going to risk prison time to steal a, a butt ugly sweater with a hole in it.
And none of the equipment, none of the like cameras, none of the lights,
nothing, no wigs,
just
no
the
nothing.
sweater.
No makeup. It was just this ugly ass sweater. It was like, I thought, okay, this is something important. But it took that for me to kind of go, oh, and then began to unfold. And we do these conventions, and it's just amazing. I think it's been 35 years that we did 4. I think it's been 35 years. I mean, that's incredible. And you want to talk about special effects, and you look at it and it looks kind of hokey, but people just loved it, and they're so incredible when they come over and talk to you. It's the gift that keeps giving. It's extraordinary. I love doing them, and we just keep rolling with them.
I love that. I love hearing that story. What's funny is that sweater would probably be worth a lot more today than some of that equipment if someone tried to sell it online.
Probably. And incidentally, they have multiple sweaters, so it wasn't like he was sweaterless. He was protected, but it was like, when you really think about breaking into a studio, you've got to get through a window, you've got to get through all kinds of security. That's a big risk for somebody. So somebody's still out there with, well, I got the sweater. It's like, or maybe he's doing jail time. I don't know.
Well, and Tiffany, the same for you. I know that you've attended some conventions. I've seen some pictures online I've interviewed Ron from Friday the 13th Part 5 and Melanie and Deborah Voorhees. But
I just heard from Ron today, actually. Yeah, he just called me today. So
he's hilarious.
Call him back to Ron. Ron is awesome.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I know that wasn't the only film that you've done, but that Friday the 13th Part 5 was also very controversial because of the whole not being Jason, whatever. But I feel like that has found its audience all these years later. But for you, what kind of memories do you have of that film? Because I know you hear it all the time, so I'm a broken record for you. But the dance scene, I know I've read, some of the interviews that you've done about that, but I think that was one of those moments that stands out in that film, aside from the kills, because it was different. It was cool. It was a different kind of, you didn't see that in the Friday films before that. It was that, kind of, I don't know. It was just a different vibe. And that's what I love about Part 5, whole different vibe to that film. For you, what was it like being a part of that cast and just being in a Friday film?
Well, yeah, I can, and you're right. What you said is, as far as it finding its audience, it's definitely getting some love these days. But kind of going back to my earlier point about giving art room to grow and do its thing. It's its own entity. That's a perfect example because, the rewritten, which it wasn't even an official rewrite. It was like they couldn't even get the script pages out. It was just kind of like, we're going with this. Because the original scene was nixed, after they did the makeup, because I was going to get split from the crotch up with a machete, doing my exercises in my room. And Mancuso was like, not going to get past the ratings board. So it had to be rewritten like right away. And it was like, and then, we're talking about crew going into overtime. And so the dancing thing, it was, and I did what I thought that they wanted at first, just kind of whatever. And then I don't even know how it transpired, but something inspired me to, again, like, give it that room and be like, this is actually what I'm doing in clubs. A few of us are doing this, It's not a huge thing, but it's like we have an audience at the clubs doing it. And I was doing some of it and they loved it. And as far as the song coming up, that happened organically too. I mean, I think that I wanted like Bauhaus or Sisters of Mercy or something on there, but it's like it was they wouldn't be able to get the rights to it. And I don't even know how that song, or if I like found it, because again, it's something that I brought to them. They didn't know who Pseudo Echo was. They didn't know what the song was. They had never seen that dance. So I brought all that to them, and I'm not even quite sure the sequence of events, how that happened. But Pseudo Echo was unknown at the time. And yeah, and the song happened to be perfect for that scene. So they were able to get the rights, and the rest is cinematic history. So, you know, and working on it again, kind of like what my mom was saying with like, oh yeah, it was this job. Like it's those snapshots in time that you don't really understand the weight of importance it's going to play in your life when it's happening. And it's, you know, like, you know, we've been talking about going to these conventions and people just love that film. Or the people who write to me and how inspired they were by Violet, you know, because they were, you know, they felt they didn't fit in at their schools or whatever. And here was a character that they could relate to. And, you know, so this low budget horror film like inspired these people, and in some cases like saved lives. People were talking about like this was an escape for them, and that character really like helped them get through some really tough times. So yeah, and it's, you know, I had no idea at the time. And it's funny because I get like guys who are like, oh my god, Violet was my first crush and she was amazing. And it's like the way I felt about myself at the time, I was like, if you had told me people were crushing on me, I'd be like, nah, get out of here. um you know, I was not comfortable in my body. So I didn't feel attractive, right? So it's so like hearing that, I'm just like, I don't know, it's interesting. So, you know, and to the young people out there who are going through identity issues, um like, I don't know, all everyone's beautiful in some way. So yeah, and do I wish I had known that at the time? I don't know. It's, you know, it was my journey, and it's not, but it's nice that I can be here today and have people messaging me with that information, and it revalidates what I did then, in a new way, because that's not what I thought was going on. So does that, I don't know if that makes sense, but
That makes total sense. I've spoken about this before on my show with other people I've interviewed. And Brooke, I want you to weigh in on this as well, because you've gone to these conventions and probably heard from a number of fans, you know, about Nightmare. But for me, the reason that I've always loved horror, it was an escape for me. And I also always related to kind of like the final girl, or the, you know, coming up against an obstacle and surviving it, because you know, and at the time I wasn't yet, it was kind of, I was still coming to terms with who I was as a person. But, you know, growing up and being, you know, a gay young person in Texas was not always, you know, before I knew I was, people were telling me I was, right? And
Yeah.
for me, being made fun of and those kind of things that you deal with, everybody deals with something when they're younger. I always found horror movies and music to be an escape for me. And some people would wonder, well, that's weird. Why horror? But it was because there were these elements of, like you, Tiffany, playing Violet, having those different people shown on screen that were not the cool people all the time, or what was perceived as the cool in crowd. And just horror movies in general always made me feel like connected, and you know, it just gave me sort of that, I don't know, I felt like I belonged in some way. So Brooke, have you heard that a lot from fans, you know, yourself, and being involved in this kind of franchise, and just people in general gravitating to whether it's your character or the films in general?
Actually, I haven't had that kind of an experience as much. But what I have had with a lot of fans is that they remember, and this always strikes me as being funny, that they remember sitting on the couch with their grandmother watching these horror movies. Their grandmother introduced them at 5, and my mind is going, your grandmother introduced it to Freddie when you were 5? Are you kidding? But the thing of it is that they're carrying this lovely memory of a time that they spent with their grandmother, their mother, their auntie, you know, or hiding. I talked to someone the other day, and he was talking about all the horror movies that he would see, but he would hide behind a door to watch them, and like that. I see you put them in the VCR and you hid behind a door. All these darling memories, but it's the sweet ones with the grandparents that I get a lot of, and and regardless of the genre, it's something that ignites a warmth in their grandparents who've passed, but it gives them that kind of warm, close feeling with their grandma or grandpa. When they meet us, it's like, oh yeah, and it's really lovely. So I haven't quite had the same experiences that Tiff's had, but again, my character was so different too. But it's interesting talking to people and finding the impact that you have on their lives. Because once we finish the movie, we wrap it up, we're on to the next. And so this is a way to revisit a time that we actually had, in our own way, had an impact, which I guess is basically what Tiff is saying too. It's just that the impact is on a different level.
Yeah, before you joined the call, I was talking to Tiffany about my dad and I would watch these horror movies, specifically Friday the 13th, because my dad thought he had a morbid sense of humor. He's since passed, but he thought Jason was funny. Like he just got a kick out of him for whatever reason. So we would watch those movies together, and the Jaws movies we'd watch together. So yeah, I love, the horror genre, and just it feels like watching as a fan from a distance that, I mean, it's such a close knit community too, just even seeing y'all with your casts from the films. So I love that. I have to ask both of you this because I know your career is more than just those horror films, right? You've done a lot of different things throughout your career, whether it's film or something outside of film. Is there something that stands out that I don't want to say maybe the most proud of, but something that you kind of feel like you accomplished that maybe it was something you didn't think you would, or something that just stands out in your breadth of work, whether that again is in film, outside of film, what you did as an agent, or even as a photographer? I'll start with Tiffany. Is there anything that stands out for you when you think back on your career?
Yeah, I was going to be like, so is this a career question or like life moments?
It could be both.
Because I guess for life moments, I would say, having my kids, that's probably the most monumental and amazing thing that happened in my life. I'm going to put my recovery, sobriety, right there with them. Right. I got sober in January 1st, 2001. Right. 111. So, and then had our first child like a year later. So, so I would say those are my big ones. I mean, there's all kinds of other big ones, but those are the two, and they're closely wrapped up with each other. But for career achievements, gosh, I guess the one thing, I don't know, I think of problem solving, and I don't even know if it's a huge career achievement. I just remember there was this musical group that I was supposed to photograph, Alchemia, and bands like shooting artists that's like my favorite thing to do, because there's such a connection between photographer and artist doing that. It's much more interesting than just having somebody pose or whatever. There's a definite artistic energy that exchanges. But I remember they got this restaurant to shoot in. And I went in there, and I was really having problems like finding the setup. I didn't know how it was going to go. I'd never seen this restaurant, so I hadn't gone in there before, but I had some idea of what I wanted. And again, that thing of like letting it flow. And I just bring up this incident because it was the most vivid, I guess, example of that. And I basically turned around and went to a different level of the restaurant and just asked them to start coming in. And it was one of the strongest sessions I've ever had. And it was, again, that letting go of what you think it's supposed to look like and just allowing it to happen. And that's a big thing in photography too, when they tell you when you're looking at a scene and it's not quite like the composition is not quite right, or it doesn't feel like flow, turn around. And that's like in the game, you turn around, you're like, oh, whole different view. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure like after this is over, I'll be like, oh, there was that time where, and I'll think of all these amazing things. But yeah, I mean, that's the one that comes to mind. And I gotta say, like with Catnip, I mean, when the dust is settled, when this pre-production leg of it's over, I think I'll be able to look back at this and be like, that was really like some cool shit that I pulled off. Because I'm really out of my comfort zone with doing like the fundraising and stuff like that. I'm very, very introverted. I like one-on-one, sometimes talking to two people, but as soon as you start bringing in 3, 4, 5, I'm like, too much. Got to go into my hole. But I think this is one of those things that I'll look back on and just go, wow. I mean, because one of the things too about working on this is how connected I feel. Like I said, I love our production team, and like connection, that's what it's all about. And I've brought this up many times before in different capacity, that my best days are when I feel connected and my worst days are when I feel disconnected.
Yeah.
And whether that's to people or nature or animals or whatever. But being connected and the relationships, that's super, super important. So I've got a strong sense of that in Catnip. So very proud to be part of the production team.
And Brooke, for you, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you have a prolific career in television, film. Same question, what stands out for you, film and then just in life in general?
Well, I mean, in terms of life, obviously my daughter, that was definitely the high point of my life. No question about that, and continues, which is really, I've talked to Tiff about it before, and I've talked to my friends, the great fortune that we have, that we're so close. I have friends that are estranged from their kids, and it's a tragedy. And it can be mended. That's the thing. It can be mended. It's holding on to old baggage. So Tiff and I have been, traveling this road together. At times we were, apart. No question about that. We're mother and daughter. But for the most part, I would say like 90% of the time we were like this, and continue to be like that. So that is, that's, the high point. And then when I became a Buddhist, that was 37 years ago. And because I don't have family here in Los Angeles, but I have my Buddhist family, and we're together. We're connected through faith. We're not connected through having a cup of coffee or, on the phone or going to a movie together. We're connected on a very deep level, and believe that we've all been connected before this lifetime. So, and we're all, working very hard for world peace, and we've got our work cut out for us. But we do see changes, and that's, it's incremental changes, and it's going to take a lot of work. So that's the other thing too. I mean, I've devoted my life to that. But in terms of work, I did a movie called Fire Creek with Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda. And that was an incredible experience, absolutely incredible. And I came to, I mean, the respect I had for Jimmy Stewart is boundless, boundless. An absolute prince of a human being. Um, just a lovely, lovely man. But the other thing too is to do something that I didn't think I could do, and that was to do a one-woman show. That was scary because there's no one else to blame. There's no one else to say a line because you've forgotten yours. Um, so that was an incredible experience, and an experience that I shared with the audience too, because it was about a woman who is second lady. Her husband is the vice president of the United States, and he's off doing something what he was doing. That's another story altogether. So I'm taking his place and doing a little rally for him. And the disappointment of the women is palpable. And I try to, like, talk about my life, my husband, and everything. And it turns out, I mean, that he was a real jerk. And the women in the audience were really, they were captivated by the whole thing as if it were real. And they started talking to me from their seats in the audience. It was like we're having a dialogue. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. One of my lines was, is it okay if I take off my shoes? My feet are killing me. And one of the women in the back said, oh, honey, it's okay. Those spikes, you don't need to wear those. And that's kind of started the ball rolling. And it was like, I mean, I couldn't go off script too much, but it was an incredible experience. And dealing with the terror. I mean, I talked about just getting online with you guys, and the stress that causes me, because it's like, oh my God, I've got to get on. That is nothing compared to the stress of standing behind a curtain, knowing you're about to go on, and there is no one there to help you. You are totally on your own, and you better remember your lines, and you better hit your mark, and you better do this, that, and the next thing. I'm sorry that it wasn't videotaped, because I was very proud of my performance. I don't have a lot of performances. I usually don't watch myself. That's the other thing too. But this, I would have liked to have seen a video of it, because
Me too.
It was very difficult, and it was beautifully written. It was an off Broadway play in New York, and a wonderful actress that played the role that I played. But it was just really, it was so challenging. And it was really, really rewarding, because you get to the other side of it and you go, I did it. I can't believe I did it. And I get a chance to do it again tomorrow. So it's, and what Tiff is doing now is really not only exciting, but it's like, I'm sitting back and watching it. I'm going, oh my God, she's doing all of this. I mean, she's doing a lot. You see a lot, but you don't see half of what she's doing and half of what she's coming up with and creating. And, and it's very stressful. People's jobs are kind of on the line, and she's somehow navigating through it and has never done this before. So it's a whole new thing for her. And it's, I sit back and watch her and go, wow, this is really incredible.
So anybody who wants to check out the film and our Kickstarter campaign, we are at catnipmoviecampaign.com. And we're going till November 22nd.